hold of the Telegraph on the plans for a World Rugby League. The football show to come at 9 o'clock as well, when amongst other things we're going to get the musical debut of Stewie Byrne coming away between 9 and 10. We'll chat to Luke Edwards as well about Newcastle United's revival. But right now we want to talk Gaelic football. It is round 5 of the Alliance Football League. Mike Quirke and Michael Meehan are on the line. Evening, gentlemen.
Hi, Nathan.
Nathan, how are you? We'll call you Mike Quirke and you Michael Meehan, just for the avoidance of widespread confusion over the next half an hour.
Fair enough, yeah.
Perfect. Michael, we'll start with Galway first, because it is Galway against Mayo this weekend. Saturday evening, Castlebar, 7:15. Galway this season coming in for a little bit of criticism. They've been inconsistent. They've 2 wins, 2 defeats so far. A lot of it about their tactics and their attacking style of play. They're the lowest scorers in Division 1 so far this season. What do you think Kevin Walsh is getting out of the league so far?
Yeah, he's getting to see a lot of players. His hands are tied a little bit with, there's maybe probably 6 or 7 panellists missing, with Kerfin having gotten through to the All-Ireland Club final on Paddy's Day, and just outside of that, it's kind of a couple of his big players have a couple of serious injuries that they're nursing, and just he's down probably, in my mind, at least 10, championship panellists come the summer, and probably from a league panel that number comes closer to 15 through injury, and I think that's definitely inhibiting him, especially when you look at the likes of Ian Burke, our only All-Star in the last, I don't know, is it 15 or 16 years, Damien Comer. A person that's really missed is Paul Conroy after his horror injury against Kerry last summer. He's a man that gets on a lot of ball around the middle of the field, and he gets his head up and he looks to create, and he's possibly been missed heavily from that, in that sense. And there's more. So I think maybe Kevin Walsh isn't going to be overly put out about the kind of criticism that they're receiving. It was last year they were free scoring. I think some of it is down to personnel. And
does it make that, like when you mention those names, like Damien Comer, Ian Burke, are key to go racking up a score in any game? They're 2 of the most talented. In Damien Comer's case, one of the most powerful forwards in the country. The absence of those players and the likes of Paul Conroy and the Kerfin contingent, does it make the league a bit of a write-off in a way in terms of what you can learn from Kevin Walsh's point of view? Is it simply a case of just about getting enough points to survive?
To a certain degree it is, in my mind anyway, because a lot of your direct, tactical and preparation work is going to revolve around Damien Comer and Ian Burke come the summer, and they're just 2 lads from our inside forward line who were missing, and to a certain degree they're contrasting players. Ian's very creative and he can score, but his ability to bring players into a match is phenomenal. Damien can be more direct, and there's an option there. I would have loved to have seen him this league under the new mark rule, because he's so powerful. He's a great jump in the air, and he's quite comfortable off left and right foot. So, if they could have been able to release him, with the new marking system that's in play, it could have been a very different league. So, I suppose what Kevin wants to do is maybe, pick out another couple of players who he can add to I suppose the ones that he wants to seriously consider for the summer. Is there any lads who can kind of step up and really kind of show them that they're able for the white heat of Connacht final day or fast forward to quarter final match, be it home, away or neutral venue.
Mike, you look at Galway's season so far. They took a heavy beating against Dublin and took a lot of stick on the back of that, but they wins over Monaghan and Cavan, and then they put it up to Kerry. It was just a 1-point win for Kerry in the end. What do you make of them so far? Is there anything you've picked out that stands out from their performances?
I look at the players and I wonder if they're really enjoying the way they're playing. No, I take the point there that obviously those guys are huge losses. I actually just forgot about Paul Conroy there. Like since the start of the year, like he's a massive loss to any team, and obviously Comer and Ian Burke in particular. Like Ian Burke is a classy guy who'd get onto most teams in the country because of his ability and the way he can see a pass and different things. But I just don't like the way they play. I thought against Kerry the last day, I thought it was it was just really, really negative. And I know they're trying to set up the best way possible to try and get a result for them. But, you know, even with the game on in Tuam, you know, a small pitch, like a terrible, terrible condition of a field. And then just the way they kind of played the game, where they're just trying to turn everything into a really dour, kind of low scoring, you know, physical kind of a battle, as opposed to, you know, maybe trying to, you know, move the ball quickly and see what they can do inside. And they just don't look to me like a, you know, like a group that's really enjoying the kind of playing the way that they're playing, you know. And I know maybe that's very simplistic. Look, when you factor in all these guys that are missing, obviously it's easier to play more expansive football. But I think they've been going down this road now for a year or two, and I haven't seen that kind of real offensive side of it yet.
And I guess that's a bit of a fine line that they're on then, if players look as though they're not that happy playing in that system. Because I guess, look, if you're winning games, everybody's happy with everything. But if you're playing that system, you're not allowing players to express their talents, and you're still not winning, it probably doesn't take long for that to get into a squad and a sort of a negative atmosphere just to take hold.
Yeah, and look, I don't know. I mean, it was just even watching the game, watching Shane Walsh the last day. And like he's one of the classiest footballers that we have in the game, in any county. And he just looks to me like a guy who's playing in a role that doesn't really suit him, you know, and that there's a huge, you know, emphasis on we're going to be really defensive, and we're going to try and break from the middle of the field, and that's the way they're playing. And again, like Michael said, maybe that changes when the personnel that's missing come back into the mix. But those personnel were there last year, and there was still, I just think they've gone a little bit too far on the defensive side of it, and there's too much emphasis on making everybody a defender all the time, and then that they're really playing that counter-attacking football. I still think that when you have the likes of Comer and Ian Burke and Shane Walsh and all these guys, I think you can still play with a lot of, you know, 4 guys up top, and you can move the ball quickly and kick it, and you can have that expansive side of it. Whereas I just think at the moment they've kind of become lost a little bit in the whole defensive side of the game.
You mentioned Shane Walsh's positioning. It was up for discussion on this week's Gaelic Football Show with Shane Stapleton and John Fogarty. Here's what they had to say.
We've seen players being rotated, moved from the forwards to the backs. Even like look at Limerick, Declan Hannon going from centre forward to centre back. Is there anything to be said for Shane Walsh playing a little bit deeper, using that unbelievable pace, almost Jack McCaffrey style, from a little deeper? Now, I don't think he's necessarily going to be a marker of any description, but maybe it's a new role for someone like that. Bring that pace upfield from deep positions, and have a plan of who's going to be coming off his shoulder and when.
Well, I don't think it's the silliest idea, Shane, because Galway operate with 3 midfielders anyway. Yeah. We've seen it because they have guys 6 foot 5. Yeah. You know, Fintan O'Curran is back in this year as well. You know what I mean? So you know, they are going to miss the twins, but the twins are the type of transitional players that you were speaking about, Tommy. But he could be the third midfielder.
Where do you stand on that, Michael? Is the possibility of Shane Walsh dropping back as a third midfielder?
I think it's an area of the field that he actually finds himself in a lot anyway. And even being in Tuam last weekend, and I haven't watched it since, you know, he was well back there, you know, behind the play at a lot of times, and I think he maybe set himself up to try to make that, you know, the couple of big plays, the big carries in a half. And to my mind, maybe it's just a little bit predictable for some of the forwards, because I think it was Tom O'Sullivan was picking it up, and a lot of times Tom was just hands on Shane's chest with his back to wherever the play was, just ready to kind of track his run and follow him and nullify him. And that's the regard he's held in by oppositions. And I think I wouldn't like to see Shane too far out of the field. I think I'd keep him closer to goal, and I just get him involved more, get him on the ball more often, and get him trying to do less, you know, individual inspiration stuff. Let him get involved with just linking up play, you know, assisting to scores.
So what, a Kieran Kilkenny type role almost?
Say that again?
A sort of Kieran Kilkenny at number 11 type role?
To a certain extent, and only with the view of kind of freeing him up a little bit. All of a sudden, he's not this player that takes me on every time and tries to do something amazing by having carried the ball 50, 60 yards. He'd be more unpredictable to mark. I think it would free him up a little bit more in that regard. Bringing him back out the field, to my mind, that wouldn't be playing to his strength. He's fantastic, you know, athletic, you know, skillful left and right, and I just see him. I nearly expect him now, anytime he gets the ball, I'm expecting him to have for the next 10 seconds that he's just going to go on an 80-yard run if he gets open road. And if I'm expecting that, I think everyone is expecting that. And I just think it's the lack of variety that is holding him back a little bit. If he could just, you know, link off a player, give and go a little bit more, I think he'd find himself freed up more, and then just getting more on the ball, because the more times you can have him on the ball, the better from a Galway perspective.
Is it a case that maybe Kevin Walsh is expecting too much from certain players in that group, that, as you say, Shane Walsh dropping deep and trying to bring the ball forward 40, 50 yards? At times last season we saw Damien Comer drop deep to get involved as well, whereas a lot of teams seem to now have such pacey halfbacks, and particularly for defensive teams, players who can transition the ball forward at real pace, what Donaghy had, what Mayo have. Do Galway have those type of players that when they win the ball back, if they have a swarm defence, when they win the ball back on their own 45, they can get the ball forward quickly and still keep Shane Walsh and Damien Comer in the forward line?
Well, they had, that was the key foundation of a lot of Galway's play last year through the league when they were on a good run, and even into championship, whereby the Johnny Heaney's, Eamon Brannigan, who's another fellow who's out injured all league, Damien Comer Walsh, or Damien Comer at times, Shane Walsh at times. These lads were countering at pace through the middle, and we were racking up big scores on the back of that. But if you're asking me, do we have enough maybe to do that by keeping, you're always going to keep an Ian Burke inside if he's available, and keeping someone close to him, I always would keep one. But that frees up either Shane or Damien or whoever it might be to fulfil that role. Like, I think there's no Kevin and Galway, share out the hard work a lot, and maybe at times maybe too much. There's kind of horses for courses as well, and sometimes. What springs to mind is, it's Mayo this weekend. Last year, I remember seeing Damien Comer at the time tracking Aidan Walsh all over the pitch at various stages during the match, back in the corner back line and everything. And that was obviously a detailed part of his plan when he moved to a certain area of the pitch. But, I suppose it served a purpose in that instance. But on the balance of things, are you better off maybe keeping those kind of players with exceptional scoring and attacking ability closer to the goal? I'd be looking to do that and trying to get that ball into them that little bit earlier than what Galway have been doing. Mike is right. They're just maybe a little bit more defensive this year, but I think it's because they haven't maybe all the squad of players available to them, and they're maybe just lacking a little bit of confidence to kind of really to go at teams. Maybe it's very much we'll mind the house first, and it is coming against them, and if it is something that will continue to come against them, if they don't come summertime have a better option of moving that ball a little bit quicker, through the pitch, getting it into the danger zones.
So they're going up against Mayo. They've got a brilliant record against Mayo recently. They've won their last 6 games against Mayo Galway, so they'll head to Castlebar with plenty of confidence. What's your take on Mayo so far then, Mike? Having been at Croke Park last Sunday, they were obviously outclassed, outpowered, out everything by Dublin in the end, and took a hefty beating. I want to chat to you in particular about Aidan O'Shea's performance and his role within the team. And again, I guess we're getting back to what a player's best position is. Billy Joe Padden was writing in the Mayo News this week. He says, I really don't know how James Horan's going to get the best out of him consistently. I really don't. And Aidan O'Shea's been around the block for a decade at this stage, and somehow we're still having this conversation.
Yeah, and he gets in the neck sometimes because of that. I mean, I still think the guy is an exceptional footballer, and he's got far more strengths to his bow than he has weaknesses. And I just think that it should be an easier thing where he's floating between centre forward and full forward. Is that an easy thing? Look, like Tommy Welsh has been able to do it, we'll say at club level, which is obviously a different level. But you're trying to get the best out of them all the time. If you leave a guy like Aidan Welsh or Aidan O'Shea sit at full forward, most teams are just going to put a guy in front of him, a guy behind him, and they're going to just block up that ball, and it becomes really difficult, and it stagnates your whole attack. Unless you try and get the guy out of there and free up a bit of space, bring him out to centre forward for 5-10 minutes, leave him see how, play it like he sees it and get back in for another few minutes. And you're just trying to keep the defence honest all the time and keep them guessing. Whereas teams are so defensive now in general that if you put a guy like Tommy or Aidan or one of these fellas at the edge of the square, they're so good at, they're working this stuff all week of denying that early ball, denying the diagonal ball to a big guy at the edge of the square. They work on picking up the breaks. So if you're just going to sit into that all day, you're not going to get the best out of an Aidan O'Shea. You have to do it. Now, I thought the last day he played pretty much the whole game at centre forward. He didn't really ask any questions of him by getting at the edge of the square. And I just think Mayo, and again, look, it's early in the league and James Horan is getting back into his flow. But I would imagine to get the very best out of that guy, he's closer to goal. So whether that's on the 45 or it's on the 21, and he's spending the vast majority of his day in between those two spots, I think the closer the goal you have and the more frees you're going to win, the better chance you have of getting offloads, getting scores. He's just a menace when he's getting the ball on the half turn close to goals, getting the ball in the half back line, taking a solo and hand passing. That's where teams want to see him getting the ball. Close to the goals, I think the more dangerous he becomes.
And if they were to go with that plan then and sort of these constant transitions from centre forward into full forward, is that something that's easily worked on in training, or is that something that O'Shea needs to sort of gauge the game as it's ongoing and figure it out for himself?
I think it's a figure it out for yourself thing. Obviously, they'll have a couple of guidelines, and maybe he spends the first 10 minutes of the game or 15 minutes at centre forward and feels it out. But if it's a situation that he can see something that he can get in there and they can hit him with a couple of diagonal balls for the next 10 minutes, and then he's slipping back out the field. I just think like a guy as experienced as him and Mayo as experienced as they are, and the big game experience that they've garnered in the last few years, they shouldn't be relying on James Horn or anybody else to come in and tell them, go into full forward now, Aidan, or go to centre forward. He's got to be able to spot this straight away and just get in there for a couple of minutes and get back out. And then when you're in there, somebody else hasn't, there isn't a sweeper in front of him for a couple of minutes. You hit him with a ball, you get a goal, and he goes back out. Or, it's just... I just hate to see the guy around the half-back line because he's a diligent worker and he's actually one of Mayo's better tacklers as well. He's very good in the tackle and he gets a lot of dispossessions. I just think a little bit like Shane Welsh, this guy, he's a threat. He's an offensive threat, and the closer you have him to the opposition's goals, the less comfortable they are going to be with that.
Do you think the scoreline last week in Croke Park was a fair reflection of the gap that's there between Dublin and Mayo now?
It was certainly a fair reflection of that game. I thought Mayo were really, really poor. They just didn't show up at all, and we were all looking forward to this game to see exactly where they were, in terms of maybe Dublin coming back a little bit and Mayo under Horn kind of pushing on, and everybody was left disappointed outside of Dublin supporters. Really, they were really, really disappointing, and I had no kind of a reason as to why that might be. I mean, they had plenty of experience. They had guys who had played those games, but it was just nearly. It was probably the younger guys that McDonough and these fellas who hadn't been there before were the guys that actually showed up best, which maybe is encouraging for James Horn because he knows what the likes of Aidan O'Shea and these guys Lee Keegan can do in the big games already.
Michael, would you go along with what Mike was saying there around Aidan O'Shea and his position, maybe more of a floating role where he certainly doesn't spend too much time back in his own 45, but he's certainly sort of floating between the opposition 45 and the full forward line?
Yeah, definitely would sign up to that. I think, looking back at this year's league, I thought he was very effective, had a great game against Tyrone. And a lot of that was just, in and around the 45 zone, generally speaking. But top ball, he was winning it and he was just laying it off to runners at times, And when Mayo were at their most dangerous after the first 20 or 25 minutes in that half, where it was a bit sluggish, they really opened up on Tyrone at that stage at the end of the first half and into the second half. And I thought what he did in that game, was the best and the best football I've seen him play in some time. And I think the important thing is just that fluidity and that movement, because if he goes in full forward the next day and sits in there, big Sean Andy O'Callaghan is going to pick him up, and it's going to be a slugfest. And that's exactly what Galway will want to happen. What Galway wouldn't want to happen is if Aidan could just drift from centre forward, or maybe someone else not as physical as picking him up there, if he can drift in and create a mismatch, at the back post or something like that, and all of a sudden he's one-on-one now with maybe a less sturdy, strong player who's expecting to be under a high ball. And that's when we've seen him in the past rack up big scores. And he's got good hands, he's got a good awareness to bring players into it. So it's those kind of pockets of space, if he can find it and just kind of drift in and out and not sit anywhere for too long, because, every team is going to have a plan from when he's around the middle of the field, when he's in the full forward line. So if he can kind of be between the two, and if Mayo are alert to that and just, they have the smarts to play him in those situations, I think he can be dangerous.
One of the other talking points around Mayo has been around Keith Higgins, who made his 150th appearance for Mayo, captaining the side at Croke Park. And last weekend, when he was in possession of the ball, he looked really good. He looked comfortable. He looked as fast as ever. He was in that man-marking role at times as well, back in corner-back position, and struggled for periods for that. Talk this week that maybe they might try and play him as a sweeper, that they might start moving him further up the pitch. Like, there was certainly a common consensus for a long time that he would have been one of Mayo's best halfbacks, but they just didn't need him in that position. Could you see him taking on that sweeper role?
I could, because I think he played it for practically all of the game against Cavan down in Castlebar a couple of weeks ago. Having watched it, he definitely swept heavily, at most stages in both halves. And I don't think it's anything, I've seen him do it before in the past as well, so I think he'd be very comfortable there. Equally, I still think he's going to be very comfortable in the corner. The unfortunate thing for him, he came up against, kind of the player who's on the hottest streak of the National League so far, certainly one of the top 2 or 3 in Cormac Costco. Like, he's been shooting the lights out, over a number of games. I think he went to town on Galway and Walsh Park, and he was very good the last night, and he's takes marking. So, there's no fault in Cormac Costco getting the better of you, given the form that he's in. So, but yeah, like we saw the goal Keith scored against Tyrone. Any forward in their day would have been proud of the composure he showed high up the pitch and his ability, to bring it in and just slot it away. So, and it's only a few years ago where he was quite effective in the half forward line as well. So you could play him anywhere. I suppose it all depends on what Mayo are willing to do. Harrison is back. He's a good man marker in there. Depending on how long Jerry Kafke might be out with injury or not, they may still need him in the full back line, and to mark as well. And if they do, I'm sure he'll do quite a good job. But at this stage, I think his best attributes are the attack and play, the speed at which he can get up the pitch and support players, and he can take a score.
Mike, Kerry have the league and probably the All-Ireland in the bag already, by the way you've started this season. 4 wins out of 4. Sean O'Shea will be player of the season.
Geez, that'd be a good bet, wouldn't it? Yeah, it's been a really, really positive start for Kerry, obviously, and Peter Keane, while he probably is playing it down, I'm sure he's delighted with the start that he's made his managerial career at senior level with Kerry, and the big positives have been the guys that have come out of left field, the Darren Moynahans and Shane Ryans, these guys, Gavin O'Brien, even Tommy Welch coming back into the mix again. Jack Sherwood at full back. There's just guys that have, that have been introduced back into the thing, or that are first timers that have taken to like the water, and it's gone really, really well. Obviously, now I don't think anybody would have predicted that Kerry would have had 8 points out of 4 games and be looking pretty comfortable to make a league final with 3 games to go. I mean, there was no one talking like that here at the start of January. So. I think everybody in Kerry is getting maybe a little bit carried away with themselves, a little bit early, but it's from a good place.
Sean O'Shea's scoring stats this season have been pretty remarkable, both for UCC in the Sigerson Cup and for Kerry as well. From the place ball, from play, from everything, he's stepped up as a centre forward, and when he's been playing as a centre forward, like how different is he from when Gooch was playing there, or from when Declan O'Sullivan is playing there? Are they expecting something very different from him, from those type of players?
No, like those 2 guys are obviously two icons of the game, and he's got a long way to go before he gets to that level. And through the first 4 games of the league, he's been Kerry's best player, without a question. And his free taking and his scoring gets plaudits, obviously, but his general play around the field is top notch stuff, as much as you could ever want from a centre forward. He's a great guy to see a pass off both feet. He can he tackles and works like a dog all over the place. He's a really quiet, kind of a humble guy as well, and he doesn't get carried away with his own hype or with winning player of the week or whatever he's doing. And he had a really solid year last year, but like everybody was, it was Clifford Mania had taken over last year. Now it's Tangle Twister Clifford Mania, and but he's after just coming on a little bit, a kind of a natural progression from where he was last year. But definitely, he's exciting Kerry supporters because of the way he's after kind of stepping up already such a distance, I suppose, from 2018.
Yeah, Michael, I think, as Mike said, everybody last year was so focused on David Clifford that Sean O'Shea was, in a way, able to be eased into the championship without the full attention that's coming on him right now. From what you've seen of him and the way he's performed over the league so far and in the Sigerson as well, like as a centre forward, just how good and how influential do you think he'll be come championship?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed everything that I've seen of him so far this year. He's one of these players that come along, not too often, and they're the type of player that just everyone in the country, will watch and will ooh and ah over. And there's going to be young lads in every quarter of the country, watching up and wanting to be Sean O'Shea this summer and for summers to come. And I think that's something very special. And it's the all-round package. He did something beautiful against Dublin in the first half the last day. It ended up going wide, but it was a dummy solo. once, dummy solo twice, taking 2 players out of it and then getting a shot away, and it's just narrowly missing from the guts of 40 yards in the first half. And he can score heavily, and definitely what Mike referred to. The amount of tackles and dispossessions I've seen him involved in it's just great to see. You love seeing a flair player, but when you can back it up with the team ethic and the real hard work and just desire to kind of put the team first. It looks and it sounds like he's an all-rounder, and the thought of him and one David Clifford forming a partnership for the next 10 years or whatever, it's quite daunting for maybe a lot of full-back lines out there.
From what you saw of Kerry last week against Galway, and from, say, the first league match against Tyrone, when there were some question marks maybe about the style and that they were a bit more defensive than people had maybe traditionally seen from a Kerry side, is there signs they're moving on from that? Are you sensing that maybe that's going to be there for the entire season?
Well, there was certainly times the last day in June where both teams were happy when the opposition had the ball to sit back and get 12 and 13 and sometimes 14 behind, and that was Galway, that was Kerry as well. And it had been talked about in the Tyrone game, and I don't think Peter has hidden behind the fact that he's working hard to get their defensive right, and there was talk, the stats recall of all the goals they conceded in last year's league, and this year, earlier on, anyway, the first 2 games they were quite good on that front. They leaked a little bit against Dublin and against Galway, but to my mind, every team that is going to be competitive and is going to be vying for the silverware this year, they're going to be a sound team defensively, and they will be well able and happy to get numbers behind the ball. And it's just the big thing the last day between the two teams, to my mind, was that the pace at which they could transition it forward, from turnover or from kick out to scoring a chance was ahead of what Galway were doing on the day. And they had great pace, throughout the field, and they just had that. They had to at times as well be really patient when Galway had their 13 and 14 back. They were able to mind the ball around the D, and just work it around. So it seemed to, it was maybe practice for what's to come. Maybe if they meet a Galway again, or the likes of a Tyrone, or some teams that set up defensively, even Dublin at times, are happy to pull the numbers back. So overall, I think they're still going to be the real attacking team, but with a hard core and a need and an ability to swarm defence if they need to.
Yeah, it probably would have been very naive, Mike, I imagine, for Peter Keane to just go out and trust that the young, vibrant, attacking talent that's there is going to somehow see Kerry to an All-Ireland title that they needed on the back of some of the championship defeats over the last couple of seasons to show a bit of steel at the back. And listen, if they're getting the results, I can't imagine anybody in Kerry's complaining.
Yeah, no, I mean, it started out against, like you mentioned, against Tyrone, and it was really tough. It was a tough watch, and they spent a lot of that game with 14 men behind the balls. At time they had 15 with Paul Gainey and everybody back there, and you were saying, geez, this can't be the way it's going to go, because there's too many good footballers on the attacking side of the field to have this there. But it's taken a little bit of time, and we saw kind of against Dublin the whole kind of marrying of the offensive side of it, where like Mike talked about there, the transition guys bursting forward from the back like Tom Sullivan and Sherwood and Crowley, and just really moving the ball quicker than we've seen in the previous 3 games. And to be fair to Peter Keane, he came out again this week and said they're training once a week in between all these games. They were doing a bit of physical stuff, I suppose, before that, so they haven't a huge amount of tactical or structural things put in place. A lot of this is kind of happening. Obviously they're being told to work and get back and tackle, and there's a big emphasis on their work rate around the middle and how many dispossessions they get and all that. But it's not a hugely kind of structured thing just yet, because it's going to be the summertime before we see the real kind of, the Peter Keane stamp and the way they want to play, and after he's got a good body of sessions into them. But whereas it right now, it's kind of, they're on the fly, they're enjoying things. I think the environment is buoyant, everybody's happy, and it's great, and everything is rosy right now until you get a loss. And when you get a loss, we'll see, and we'll readjust from there, I suppose. Yeah,
I just want to touch on one other story out of the league so far, Mike, which is Fermanagh in Division 2, who are on 6 points. They're unbeaten. They've won 2 games. They've drawn 2 games. I'm not sure how much you've seen of them. It hasn't been the most exciting football. They've played 4 matches. They've scored 40 points, the lowest in any of the divisions, and they've only conceded 35. So averaging 10 points scored, averaging 9 points conceded. But it is getting results for Rory Gallagher, who got them promoted from Division 3 last season, who got them to an Ulster football final. I fear for him come the summer in the first televised game and the slaughtering that their style is going to get, and puke football and destroying the game and all that. But bloody hell, he knows how to get results.
Yeah, but it's tough though. It's tough to watch. It's tough to look at. It's tough to support. And like, you know, I haven't seen much of them this year. I've seen obviously all their or most of their games last year. But I just, you see, this is the problem where it goes. Then where does it go from Fermanagh doing this? It goes to every club who say, you know, we don't match up with these guys, so let's get 14 or 15 men behind the ball and let's get as fit as we can. Let's get, you know, tackling everything that moves, and let's try and keep the score down to a 9-8 or a 10-9, and let's live off that. Like, I don't know where you go with that. I mean, are you delighted if you're a Fermanagh supporter because you're up there in the mix maybe to get promotion and you're winning games and you're relevant now and people are talking about you? Or are you saying, Jesus, man, I don't know if this is the right way to be playing football? I'm sure it's a 50-50 split. For me, it's a tough watch. It's not something I enjoy overly. But again, you know, like we were talking about with Galway, if you don't have the personnel right now, I can't really give out about a manager who's getting the most out of his team or for his team and setting up in a way that's giving them the best chance of having a bit of success.
I guess it is hard to criticise Rory Gallagher, Michael, when they are getting the results. If he gets them up to Division 1, it'll be one of the best managerial achievements of the last few years when you look at the resources that Fermanagh have. Yeah,
absolutely. You know, they're you know, beginning to punch over their weight, or maybe that's unfair to say from the outside, but yeah, look, my views on it are quite similar to what Mike has alluded to. I wouldn't be my preferred style of play, you know, going to club games or county games and even, you know, involved with teams and underage teams and things like that. It's not. It's a catch-22. Like, if it can deliver, it does deliver a certain amount of success. You know, depending on the pool of players available to you, and it can be very difficult to break down. So, you know, you cannot give out to any club manager or county manager for trying it. It's just the longevity of it. I don't think that it's there. I would think that you know, people can get tired of it maybe quicker. But it's just it really is a catch-22. Like, if I apply it to kind of where Galway are at, like Galway were stuck in Division 2 for good to 10 years. And we're just being criticised for being, you know, flaky and fancy dance and nice players, but, you know, no backbone. And, you know, what Kevin Walsh has done, as you know, with how he's approached things over the last 5 years, has made them into, you know, a very, very competitive team with Connacht titles over the last few years, with league final appearances, and with a Division 2 league. And you know, so like, it's hard to argue with it, but we have we have people around here and everywhere looking at Galway and saying, oh God, they're underachieving and they could be doing so much more, and there's elements of that to it, but like, it's how do you please everyone? You can't. Yeah,
Mike, have you ever seen Kieran Donaghy with a hurl in his hand?
That was a good one, wasn't it? Like a performance coach. I actually saw him on This Morning with you there, and he was defending Dougie Howlett's position with the Cork hurlers. And then I pick up the paper about an hour later. I see he's got in with Galway. It's a funny one. Yeah, it's a funny one. Now, like, I can obviously, the logic in it, and people, you know, were saying about what does Donny know about a hurling? Obviously, not very much. But the guy knows about, you know, about good environments and about positive environments. And I think that was, is that his title, a performance coach or whatever it is. But that's obviously not going to be involved with the technical or tactical side of the game, because if that's the case, then Galway are in trouble. But I think if he's involved in you know, in generating or cultivating a kind of a good kind of environment in you know, with the group, or talking to guys and giving guys a little bit of experience. Like, the guy has an infectious kind of positivity about him, and he knows, you know, he knows people. He doesn't know hurling, but he knows people, and he knows how to get a lot out of people. And I think, I would assume that I haven't spoken to him about it, but I will. But I would assume that that's going to be his role, to deal with the people as opposed to the game. And that's something that you know, anybody who's met him can testify that the guy is good with those kind of situations. Yeah,
that's for sure. He's certainly an infectious character. Michael, it is the hurlers that he is getting involved in, but as we saw, Dougie Howlett's involved with the Cork hurlers as well. Like, having somebody from the sort of Kerry environment and the elite sporting environment that Kieran Donaghy comes from, and I guess he knows as well how to come back from disappointments of losing All-Irelands and going back and winning a title again. You'd imagine he can actually bring a lot to this Galway hurling squad.
I'd imagine, yeah, definitely. I know Kieran. I would have spent time with him on an international rules trip a number of years ago, and that was, that I very much made aware of his personality and his way and how he approaches things. And I think he is that infectious character that it breathes life into every situation in every dressing room. So. And I don't think he's the fact that he's coming in with, he's not a big hurling man per se, but he can come in with a very blank canvas and just call things as he sees them from, based on the remit that he's been given. And I think, he's going to bring a huge amount of experience, even to a lot of experienced players who are there in the Galway panel. But yeah, he's won finals, he's lost finals, he's bounced back and won finals again. And there's a huge wealth of experience that I think that can be gleaned off of him, in his trips to Lough George for the year ahead. And the first thing that came to my mind is when I was back in primary school, we had a caretaker, and God rest him, he's passed on since. But we'd be out playing hurling at lunchtime, and he'd be tending to the ditches or whatever he might have been, and he'd come out and start playing hurling with a slash hook. So I'm just wondering, is Kieran going to turn up to Lough George tonight with a big 48-inch slash hook for himself?
And would he notice the difference?
I'd say he does, yeah.
Lads, great stuff as always. Thanks a lot for that. Looking ahead to the Allianz League games, Michael Meehan, Mike Quirke there joining us, and we'll of course be chatting to Kieran Donaghy again next week when we touch on his new performance coaching role with the Galway Hurlers. Quick break, and then we're talking about this potential new World Rugby League.
Off the Ball on News Talk.
I'm delighted to say that one of the stars and residents of Sesame Street is on the line. Cookie Monster, good afternoon to you.
Hello, Sean.
Can you remember, Cookie Monster, when you first ate a cookie?
Oh, me remember that first cookie like it yesterday. Yes, my whole life changed after that.
Because I was wondering if before the cookies, you ate cookies, what was your name? Because you wouldn't have eaten cookies, so you wouldn't have been a Cookie Monster then.
Yes, you are. You're going deep into the history.
Hear the full Moncrief podcast at newstalk.com and on the Newstalk app.
I've been head of security for my family 35 years, dog years, yeah. I deal with all the major threats, loud noises, postmen. AA Home Insurance takes care of the rest, house and contents. But that's just a backup. I've totally got this. I've got a nose for trouble. And bacon.
With AA Home Insurance, you can claim up to €3,000 without losing your no claims discount. Go to the AA.ie. Who's got clever home insurance? Covers one claim in any consecutive 3-year period. Acceptance criteria, terms and conditions apply. AA Ireland Limited Trading as AA Insurance is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
So they said, Deirdre, we want you to be the voice of appliances delivered. I'll want a few juicy perks, says I. I'll want the fastest delivery and hassle-free installation on everything I buy. And I want the very best prices. And you can take away all my old appliances and all the annoying cardboard as well. You're on, they said. Tough negotiator, aren't I?
Deirdre, they do that for everyone.
Shut the fridge door. Okay, then I want that fridge to be full of champagne. And I want the washing machine filled with very expensive lingerie and a massive telly. Shop the full